Have you ever had a song that gets stuck in your head so aggressively that it practically becomes a soundtrack to your entire day? You wake up to it, you brush your teeth to it, you try and focus on something important, and your brain goes, "Hey, remember that song?" And suddenly that same memory loops over and over and over and over and over and over again. That experience has a name, which you probably know. Well, the scientific term is actually involuntary musical imagery, which basically means your brain is playing it without your permission. And yes, almost everybody gets them. And those people who don't, I am incredibly jealous of. Studies show that around 90% of people experience an earworm every single week. And yes, it really sucks. They're common, they're normal, and almost always they're completely infuriating. Why do earworms actually happen? Why do some songs get glued into the inside of your mind and others just can't seem to stick? And why is it that almost every single time that you get an earworm, it's a really infuriating, annoying song? Or at least it gets to be that way after a while. Today, we're going deep into the psychology and neuroscience behind earworms. What are they? Why do they happen? Why are some songs way more infectious than others? And how you can actually get rid of them. Well, welcome back to MVP. My name's Vaughn, and let's figure this out together. Okay, let's start with what an earworm actually is. An earworm is a fragment of a song, usually a melody, a hook, or a rhythm, that repeats in your mind over and over and over again without you consciously wanting that to happen, also known as involuntary. You're usually not imagining the entire track, it's only about 10 seconds, even down to 1 second. And that short loop becomes persistent and bounces around in your brain over and over again, even though knowing us, probably not much to bounce off of. And believe it or not, there are a few different types of earworms. Some are persistent, they stay with you for hours and days. Some are triggered, you see a word or an image and it reminds you of a song and suddenly you can't stop repeating it in your brain. Some are anticipatory, your brain predicts what's coming next in a song you know very well, and keeps playing it internally even when the music stops. And then there are phantom earworms, where musicians swear they hear faint music even when everything else is quiet. Pretty creepy, right? So that brings up the question, why does the brain create these earworms? The first reason is your brain is a pattern recognition machine. It's constantly scanning the world for structure, order, and repetition, which music is entirely built off of. So when you hear something really catchy, your brain stores it really efficiently. And because it's so efficient, when it's stored, it just plays back automatically over and over and over and over and over again. The second reason is your predictive coding. And as I said in my previous video, your brain doesn't just listen to music passively. It tries to guess what's coming next. And when the melody has a good mixture of predictability and surprise, your brain pays extra attention, because that's what it likes. And so that's why in songwriting, the hook really needs to play with your expectations. It sets up a pattern and then gives it a tiny twist. And it rewards you with a sense of, aha, I know this. And that's why certain melodies stick more than others. Some melodies can be catchy but not quite interesting, but other ones can play on it perfectly to get it stuck in your head forever. Okay, next is a phonological loop. This is a part of your working memory that stores little bits of sound. It's mostly meant for language, remembering a phone number long enough to dial it if you were born in the 1800s. That's a joke, boomers, don't get angry at me. Or retaining the start of a long sentence so you know what it means. Unless you speak like Yoda. Does anyone unironically speak like Yoda? I'm sure there's got to be one guy out there. Probably weighs 200 pounds. Anyway, I digress. But music, as you could probably tell, hijacks this system. When a melody enters a phonological loop, it repeats itself automatically, like a tiny little audio clip bouncing around in your brain, if you've got one. And that's why most earworms feel like they're constantly on a loop, because they quite literally are. The next big factor is repetition. The more you hear a melody, the stronger its connections are within the brain. But here's the catch. You don't need to hear the whole song for it to build a strong connection. Take TikTok, for example. When you're scrolling through TikTok, you're not going to listen to the entire song with an audio clip. It's going to be about 2 seconds. Even a 2-second TikTok clip, or a jingle from an advert you heard ages ago, is enough to plant a seed in your mind that will end up becoming an earworm, and annoying the hell out of you. In addition to this, emotion does play a huge role in this as well. As you know from my music video, your brain ties music to emotions and feelings. If you hear music during a significant moment, say you're really happy, or you're really sad, or you're really surprised, it becomes more deeply imprinted because it has that emotional connection to it. That's why that if you're learning something, whether that's music or not, if you're emotionally attached to what you're learning, you're going to learn it a lot quicker and you're going to remember it a lot better. This creates what psychologists call emotional tagging. The melody becomes linked to a moment, and your brain replays it much more easily. Quite simple, right? Now, here comes a really fascinating part. Something called the Zeigarnik effect. And yes, this is one of the most fascinating contributors to earworms and why they're created. If I'm saying that wrong, please correct me. I'm not perfectly fluent in German. Now, the Zeigarnik effect says your brain fixates on unfinished tasks. This can be linked to music because if you have a melody that doesn't quite resolve or finish, like if it ends up on a note that isn't quite resolved or it ends mid-phrase, your brain instinctively tries to fix it. So it loops a fragment over and over and over again because it's waiting for that closure that will just never come, unfortunately. Just like after 7 years, he's not coming back with the milk. But anyways, I digress. And that's why so many earworms are just the hook and it's never the full song. Hooks are designed to be musically incomplete. That's why it's called a hook, because it makes you want to hear the completed version. This incompleteness creates the tension that your brain really, really wants to resolve. And that, in effect, keeps you listening. That's why they call it the hook. So let's talk about why some songs are more likely to become earworms than others. Most earworm songs share a few similar musical features. First, they have a simple singable melody. They don't jump around too much. They usually stay within a small melodic range. They move mostly step by step because it's easier for an average person to remember. Second, they have distinct hooks. The hook is a part of the song that's designed to stick out, the part that repeats the most. A good hook is a strong rhythmic identity and a clear melodic shape. If you can recognise a song within the first 2 or 3 notes, it has earworm potential, and therefore annoyingness potential. Third, earworm songs use repetition with variation. Too much repetition, as you could tell, is very boring, but too little repetition is forgettable. But music that repeats with small, interesting differences keeps the brain engaged. Pop music does this constantly, which is probably why real musicians don't really like it. And especially those really annoying jingles you hear on the radio all the time, they do that too. Fourth, many earworm melodies have a unique rhythmic fingerprint. Sometimes it's the rhythm, not the notes, that gets stuck in your head. Think of We Will Rock You, or any riff-driven rock song with a strong groove. The rhythm can stick out even more than the melody. Fifth, many earworm songs have a small unexpected twist. Maybe an unusual interval, a syncopated accent, or a melodic turn that feels surprising yet satisfying. That tiny twist captures your brain's attention and makes the melody memorable. And finally, cultural exposure really matters. If a song is everywhere, if it's on social media, in shops, on the radio, your brain internalizes it whether you like it or not. Take Mariah Carey, who's constantly showing up every Christmas, screaming in your face, "Ah, it's time! Shut up!" But anyways, I digress. Even songs you dislike can become earworms, because you can just hear them constantly, all the damn time. And I'm sure you have had at least a couple earworms of songs that you absolutely hate. And yes, it really sucks. Now that we know what earworms are and why they stick, let's get to the point to why you're actually here. How do we get rid of these really annoying buggers? Okay, first of all, what not to do. Trying to force a melody out of your head makes it significantly worse if you didn't realise already. When your brain actively resists a thought, your brain pays way more attention to it. So don't fight the earworm, it just strengthens the loop. Think if someone's told you not to do something, that's the only thing that you want to do. I'm sure you all can relate to that. Your brain is the exact same as you are. So, what can we do? One of the best ways to get rid of an earworm is to just listen to the full song. Because your brain hates the unfinished pattern. Remember the Zeigarnik effect. Your brain hates the unfinished pattern. So if you finish that pattern off, boom. If your brain only hears a small fragment of the song, it's repeating it because it wants to be finished. So if you allow it to be finished by listening to the song, it's gone. Because your brain has a closure and it closes the loop. Another effective method is doing something that occupies your working memory. Your working memory is where this earworm is stored. So if you do something like a puzzle, or reading, or even playing a musical instrument, or even doing something like having a conversation with someone, which, as musicians, we probably don't do because we've not got friends. Just anything that will get your brain off the tracks of the earworm. I'd rather a teacher screaming at me that I'm going to join a gang because I'm chewing gum somehow, than having an earworm in my ear. Even though my old English teacher had a really freaking high-pitched voice. But anyways, it sounds ridiculous, but chewing gum has genuine research support. Chewing disrupts subvocal rehearsal, which is the internal voice that you use to rehearse melodies. When that system is busy, it's not going to pay attention to the earworm, and hopefully, the earworm just gets lost. Something that some other people do is to just replace the earworm with something different. This can work but obviously you're going to have to be careful with it. The last thing you want to do is trade an earworm for something that's just as bad, if not worse, unless you're masochistic and really like torturing yourself. Using a simple, familiar song that you know can often clean up the earworm and make it less intolerable. If only there was a way to make me less intolerable. Sometimes it can actually reset your brain. But the truth is, the earworms, they're not a flaw in the brain. They're a natural consequence on how humans connect with music. Earworms are just proof that your brain is analysing, predicting, learning, listening, doing all of these things while you're listening to music. And they're proof that your mind is just genuinely really musical, even when you don't realise it or you're not musical yourself. Just remember that when you have an earworm, it's just your brain doing what it's designed to do. And while that can be annoying, I'd much rather have an earworm than a broken brain. Well, I do have a broken brain. I'd much rather have an earworm than a completely broken brain, because that would truly suck. And on that note, I'll see you in the next video. So happy Saturday, my guitar-headed friends. And remember, always burn the candle at both ends, because 2 fire better than 1 fire. So go watch some of my other videos, and remember to subscribe because these take a while to do. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye!